Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to continue looking at OKC and how defenses, especially very good defenses, have played against them in the ending of close games. The three games we're going to talk about are the Celtics, the Timberwolves, and the Golden State Warriors. We're going to discuss what each of them did in particular to try and limit what OKC does well on defense and whether it worked or it didn't work and why that occurred. Let's go. The first thing to establish right off the bat is in all of these games, SGA just played out of his mind. Him attacking the Celtics' best defender and winning battles consistently shows how high level, how skilled he is. Drew Holiday is a very aware defender, and yet him getting in the air from SGA gives the opportunity for SGA to drop the foul. And while I'm not a huge fan of that simply from a beauty of basketball perspective, SGA is playing within the rules of the game. That is not his fault that they officiate that way. And again, we see him attacking Drew Holiday, and SGA having this ability at the end of games, in the middle of games, period, opens up so much for OKC offense and drives what they love to do. And so here we're looking at the same thing with OKC and Golden State. Golden State has gone on a little bit of run at this point, but here we have SGA driving and him having Schroeder on him, another very good defender. He is still going to create an edge, and if you give him that edge whatsoever, he is going to get to the rim and or shoot from the outside and do it with very, very high efficiency. And with this high efficiency, he's able to post up, he's able to attack essentially the basket in a huge amount of ways and get open looks. And I don't want to just harp on the fact that SGA is the best player in OKC, but I mean, obviously he's potential MVP or MVP at this point for a reason. And I think it's crucial to understand that how much of their offense flows through him. Like watching these three endings, the majority of the really good shots that OKC got were because of SGA driving and attacking or shooting on the perimeter like we saw in those earlier examples. But here he's attacking Gary Payton, and these are very, very good defenders that he's getting great looks against. Now, the first thing that we saw OKC do on offense against the Celtics here, we're watching them trying to attack the mismatch. This is the first example I saw them trying to attack a mismatch, and they're looking for Al Horford in particular as probably the slowest player on the floor, given that he's also the oldest player on the floor. So a little bit in transition right here, you see him just to try and attack immediately. If the defense isn't set, that means the Celtics aren't going to provide their stereotypical help defense, and so he is able to attack Al Horford, and that is a matchup that the OKC staff wants for sure. And Case and Wallace with a great drive to the rim to increase their lead. All right, and then we see both the example of OKC attacking and what Boston's attempt to counter that was, and then OKC's further counter off of this. This is actually my favorite play of all these clips. So we're watching the ball screen here with SGA. They're going to bring up Hartenstein. Why? Because Hartenstein has Al Horford on him. As you can see him point up. Hartenstein is going, what does Boston do? They're like, we don't want Al Horford with SGA. No way. So what they're going to do is they're going to send Drew Holiday. You essentially switch on to Hartenstein before he even gets up there, and Al Horford's going to go down here with number 8. And so given that, SGA is like, let's just give the ball to Jalen, who himself is an elite driver, and have him attack the mismatch because now he has Al Horford on him. So you have two good defenders that have now vacated the area because of that early switch, and OKC is like, let's attack that. And Jalen is able to get downhill and spinning back to the middle, gets a fairly good look in the middle. Even though he misses this, that's still probably a shot that OKC is content with taking. If you're enjoying this content and think you would like more of it, feel free to like and subscribe. I do post weekly, and frankly, I'll cover the playoffs in exquisite detail is the goal. All right, so then we get our first glimpse of the Timberwolves. And so this is kind of a weird one because the Timberwolves went on like a crazy run to end it, and they hit a lot of crazy shots. So this probably shouldn't have been, frankly, as close as it was, but they did a lot of unique things on defense too. And so the first is they went to a zone. I'm not sure for how much of the game that they went to the zone because I didn't watch the full game, but simply going to a zone here does confuse OKC's defense a little bit, and they're able to rotate behind it and make sure you don't get drives to the middle and make sure you don't get SGA attacking the middle because he doesn't have the ball or you're not able to pass it to him, and they rotate fairly well. And sometimes simply causing the offense to think a little bit more and get them out of sorts does wonders to create a little bit of issues for them where they don't get as good of a look as they would normally. And so the other nice thing about zone is you can have Naz Reid on SGA, which would normally be a mismatch. But because you're in zone, you're able to cheat over a lot more. And so you can provide more of like a pack line style defense where you're helping over and make sure SGA doesn't have driving lanes. And this, frankly, is a great pass to the middle, and they went to sleep a little bit on defense. But Caruso misses it. But that's still, you can't really fault OKC for getting that look. That's a great look that Caruso makes 95% of the time. And so the Timberwolves, the defense worked partially, but obviously at the end it would have led to a great shot. Okay, so same concept with 45 seconds left. And so one potential takeaway is that this zone led to OKC struggling on offense. But from that clip and this clip, we're going to see that they actually got still really good looks. So again, one beautiful thing of this zone right there is SGA really can't attack on his own. You got to pass it to someone else and force someone else to make a shot. And that's probably what the Timberwolves ultimately want. But because they're overloaded, they have another player down here in the corner. If you get 0 to rotate, if you have 3 come over, McDaniels come up, and then 0 now has these two offensive players to be in charge of. So you get the ball to Jalen Williams. He's going to close out here, and Jalen Williams is going to be like, oh, well, that's the easiest pass of my life. I'm just going to pass to the corner. And the rotation is going to be this player over here all the way across. And that's a pretty tough rotation. So this is, again, another great look for OKC. They miss it, and the Timberwolves ultimately do come back to tie this game here momentarily. But even against the zone, what the Timberwolves were trying to do, OKC still got really good looks, and I think that's an important takeaway. So again, we're watching the zone here, but this is, I think, a slightly different caveat, is that as the ball gets swung around, that is obviously the goal of the Timberwolves, but we're watching number 9 right here. And so his mentality, normally he would be to close there for sure and get a hand up in this player's face to make sure he doesn't have an attack, whatever. However, you can see he doesn't even want to fully commit because his priority is more so stay with SGA. You can see McDaniels, the same thing, is way too far right here. They should collapse down here. But the coaching staff clearly told them that we want to make sure the ball doesn't get back to SGA. And so force one of the other 4 players on the court to go and beat us. And OKC obviously struggled in the last 4 or 5 minutes of that game doing this. Again, here we can see the exact same concept. We have the double up top, or the loose double, the passive double maybe. But then we're watching how they make sure that the ball doesn't get back to SGA. 9 right here is full on deny. And so this is obviously pretty difficult to do with a zone because then you have to do like a 1-2-1, and you obviously haven't practiced that very much. But that being said, they're willing to take that risk simply because they don't want SGA to have the ball. And so OKC moves the ball around and SGA stays spaced, and so this would theoretically be a huge advantage for OKC. But simply taking away their point guard puts a deflection right there, puts someone else driving the ball, and even when the ball gets ricocheted, you still see SGA being denied. And again, that's a pretty good look for OKC, but simply taking it out of SGA's hands gave the Timberwolves a better chance in their opinion, and frankly, in this game it worked out as well. And then the team that I thought actually had the most success in crunch time preventing OKC is Golden State. I thought Golden State did it remarkably, and we're going to see a lot of it's triggered simply by Gary Payton. So as this ball is going to get inbounded right here, Gary Payton, it cut off a little bit right there, but Gary Payton was denying SGA the whole time. Just force someone else to bring the ball up, okay? Force him to play, and we're watching Gary Payton in particular, and the whole time he is absolutely glued to SGA, making sure SGA doesn't get any looks. I think at some point he has an arm around him here, just limiting his movement. And OKC is like, well, if you're going to deny him that much, we're not going to really just strain to get him the ball. Instead, we're going to try and flow through the offense and get good looks on our own. But Golden State was like, we'll allow that, We'll take that risk. And we can see Schroeder, when he got switched onto SGA in the little confusion right there, he is now in the role of deny as well. And Golden State's like, if you can beat us with the other 4 players, that's fine, but we're not going to let SGA beat us. So as that free throw went up, Gary Payton, what does he do? He's looking, where is my target? He's looking for SGA immediately, instant deny. And because OKC doesn't want to just force the ball to SGA 24/7, they're going to take the simpler route and have somebody else bring it up. And so this is one thing, like in that last possession, obviously the Thunder didn't get a great look. And so that's what the Warriors are banking on. They're saying your other 4 players just aren't going to be as good. Because SGA is the MVP for crying out loud. And so Gary Payton is just going to lock in here, force someone else to drive, and trust our defenders behind it. And that's a good possession from Golden State right there. And the last one is denied, just to highlight it. Again, Gary Payton is denied, even on the screen right here. He's locked, making sure SGA doesn't get any open looks. And the thing is, OKC kind of gets conditioned to the fact that SGA is not a part of the offense because he's so denied that they feel like they can't even go to him. Like they stop looking for him. They start going other directions. And so this is a decent shot from OKC. Obviously, Isaiah Joe is a good three-point shooter, but this is hard going to the left and potential closeout, and probably Golden State is willing to trade that to try and make sure that SGA doesn't get involved in the game. And then we would think at some point, well, OKC surely didn't just let Shai get denied the whole game. They surely tried to do something, and this is the first step they tried to do. And they tried to use him as a screener. The reason it works as a screener is because Gary Payton is not going to leave SGA. So if SGA gets any piece of Steph, essentially you're going to have your offensive player going downhill with nobody in between them besides the help defense, because these two defenders are going to be occupied both with Shai essentially. Okay, so as this screen gets set, it really does put the Warriors in a dilemma. You could see Steph kind of, I'm assuming Gary Payton was saying something, but Steph kind of knew it was coming, so tried early to get away around it. But SGA does a decent job of making contact. And so because of that, Gary Payton feels like they have to switch because SGA got contact on Steph. And so now you no longer have an elite defender on SGA. You have Steph. Steph's still trying to deny, but he's just not going to be Gary Payton. Like, that's the trade-off. He's always going to be great on offense, but not as great on defense. And so SGA now has the opportunity to attack a weaker defender. And so that forces your defense to show more help because of how good SGA is. And you get wide open looks out here on the perimeter. And these are much better looks, again, because they were able to get SGA the ball. And the final example for OKC is while Gary Payton is just denying SGA, they were essentially like, okay, let's just not even stress about it. Let's just go to the next best option. And so Jalen Williams, you're our second best driver. And so what they do is like, okay, well, let's just get Steph involved with our second best driver and attack based on that. And Gary Payton can't help and force them to guard us that way. And so SGA is out of the picture, but this is OKC saying like, we're going to take the simpler option. That's our next best option. And while it's probably not as efficient as SGA, Jalen Williams driving on Steph is almost for sure probably still going to be a win for the offense because you're only going to have 4 defenders, so it's going to be hard to rotate for the defense as well, and that's obviously a really good look. And so in conclusion, from these 3 games, essentially what we saw is a huge emphasis to try and limit SGA. SGA won battles with really great defenders consistently across the board when he had the ball in his hands. And so the defense, whether it was zone or deny, essentially tried to limit his ability to even get the ball in his hands in the first place. And that seemed to work for Golden State, and it worked a little bit for the Timberwolves. And for the most part, I'd say the biggest takeaway is the fact that OKC didn't have a solution for it. Like their biggest solution was to set a screen a couple times with SGA, which, I mean, it works, but it's probably not the ideal because you still want SGA to have the ball. And then the other solution was to simply use your second best driver instead of SGA. And so I think OKC's coaching staff is probably thinking pretty critically about what they need to do to make sure SGA still is able to get the ball in those times, because you want him to have the ball because he's your best player, possibly the best player in the NBA. If you enjoyed this, feel free to like and subscribe. And most importantly, have a blessed rest of your day.